So it's been nearly a week since you heard from me last, and I'm guessing you probably know why. Well yeah, much like you, I've been loving everything Phase 2 has to offer, and rather than putting a video out every time something gets found, I just wanted to achieve my own goals in Phase 2, and after a lot of hours, I can say I've done the majority of what I wanted to achieve by now. You was like me a week ago, super excited to get out and discover all the new goodies that Blizzard added for Phase 2, go out and find them new runes, secrets spread all over the world in new zones we can now level in, and so much more. So naturally, I was sat inside Black Fathom Deeps for about an hour before launch to run that for big amounts of XP, which at level 25 is about 3/4 of a level, then run round handing in quests that I stacked up so I could skip a couple of levels, and of course now all the new stuff was ready and waiting for me. So what did I do? I got a group of 5 of us and spent so much time in Scarlet Monastery that my eyes started to bleed. This meant by the time I was 40, everything had already been discovered and I just had to run around and grab everything. Yeah, come on, don't judge me. A lot of you done exactly the same thing. But anyway, what do I think about Phase 2? We're going to cover absolutely everything from the STV PvP event, Gnomeregon, class balance, runes, quality of life books, professions, just basically everything, and including some changes or news posts that have gone out in the last couple of days. So starting with the runes. All the new runes have now been discovered, and I hate to say it, but I do feel the rune acquisition wasn't quite as exciting this time round as they were in Phase 1. Sure, there's been some interesting ones like the Dark Rider quest chain, but speaking as a mage, having 2 runes drop from the exact same NPC in STV just seemed a little bit lazy to me. I haven't looked through where every single rune comes from for all the classes, but to me personally, I did feel like some of the mage ones were just a little bit lackluster. Outside of my qualms with how they were actually acquired though, the runes themselves are absolutely fantastic for the majority of classes, and with now having access to so many more talents, it makes things really interesting in how you make your spec and your rune loadout. I've respec'd and switched runes so many times already just trying to find a spec I'm happy with for raiding and doing the STV event and just general farming in the open world, but I've practically got no gold left. Yeah, I respect a lot, even though it does only cost 1 gold each time. I was quite surprised no runes came from the supply logistics reputation, but there are some good recipes that people will need from them, so you'll still need to make sure that you actually keep your crates, hand them in, and get the reputation up, because Lesser Arcane Elixir, for example, which is a spell power elixir, actually comes from this reputation, so it's not completely pointless to do. Moving on to the class books, all of these have been found as well now, and basically just get yourself in any dungeon like Razorfen Crawl, Razorfen Downs or Scarlet Monastery and you'll get what you need. Some are definitely stronger than others, like Portal of Summoning for Warlocks, which at the time of doing this video doesn't even need you to be in a party with a Warlock to use them, which I'm assuming will change because that's quite strange. But whilst it's strange, if it doesn't change, that's pretty crazy. Rogues getting redirect, Druids getting an out of combat res, Hunters with Aspect of the Viper, which is the most bonkers version of this aspect I've ever seen, among many others, but ultimately they are just quality of life books, and I do feel like there's certain ones that definitely still need adding, and I also feel like some classes got a lot better quality of life books than others, because as a very biased example of someone who plays a mage, I'd love to see a book that affects water, because given the choice between spending about a full mana bar to make 8 water or just go to the vendor and actually buy a stack, it's very difficult not to just go to the vendor. So all I'd like to see really is a book that always conjures 20 waters at a time. This means on the journey to 60 it's really going to help out. At 60 it's then kind of irrelevant, but it would definitely be nice for the next few months. One problem I do see though in regards to dungeons is I feel there's a severe lack of incentive to run dungeons at 40. In fact, for me personally, since hitting level 40, I haven't done a single dungeon at all, because on the way from 25 to 40, myself and the group I was dungeon farming with got everything we needed pre-Biswise for Gnomeregon. I said in a podcast recently that there needs to be a bit of an incentive, even if it's a daily dungeon quest that rewards a supply crate or a small amount of gold and maybe a little bit of reputation with the logistics reps. Just really anything. I love the dungeons at this level bracket, and I know you're probably thinking, bro, you can just go and do them for fun. You don't have to have a reward. And you are kind of right, but I am a sucker for that carrot on a stick. If there's literally zero reward for doing something, I might as well go and do something where there is a reward, be it a Raffi Basin for reputation, or even just farming some of the swamp monsters in Swamp of Sorrows for Heart of the Wilds to make some gold. The latter is something I've spent a lot of time doing and actually made a lot of gold. And to be fair, if you run a build like mine on the mage, being able to one-shot every alliance I see is pretty damn fun. But how about Gnomeregon? This is where I become even more unpopular with some of you than I already am, but I'm not really a fan. Sure, there is a couple of interesting bosses, but I feel like the place is so big to only house 6 bosses that there could have definitely been an extra couple added in different spots where all there is just tons of trash. Something I never thought I'd say is that I think after only doing one clear, I actually preferred BFD. That is just my opinion. You might love Gnomeregan after your first clear, or you've seen videos, you've not actually been in there with your guild yet. It's kind of fun. I enjoyed it. It was good to actually go in blind and not know any of the bosses, because that's what we done. We just went in and we wanted to work it out for ourselves, even though on the last boss people definitely started looking at videos. I just felt like outside of a couple of the bosses, there weren't really anything interesting going on. But those couple of bosses do really make up for it, I suppose, because they have got interesting mechanics, which I won't spoil here in case you plan on going in blind as well, but it is very much like Black Fathom Deeps. It starts incredibly easy, where you don't even realise you're killing bosses until you see the loot drop, and then when you get to the end, it really does take a step up, which could be compared to when you reached Kelris in Black Fathom Deeps and just had no idea what was going on. The loot, though, now that's good. Not only are the bosses dropping a set piece, they also drop the tokens, which was spoken about before launch. So how it looked to me after just the one run that I've done is the last few bosses drop a token which anyone can use to trade in. These tokens are specific slot tokens though, but they're not class restricted. So there'd be a boot token or a chest token or a leg token, but any class can use them. These are traded in inside the raid, where a lot of things are going to happen around professions, which we'll touch on later, but this particular room in Gnomeregan is actually quite an important room, and like I say, it's where you'll trade your tokens in for the tier sets. But the way they've done it, when you get to the last few bosses, essentially you could get a 2-set bonus from a single boss, so that's not too shabby. Also, the last boss drops a quest item, which gives you one of these 4 epic necks, and these necks are super cool, so you definitely want to get a hold of one of these. Basically, it's directly comparable to the last boss in BFD, where it rewarded a trinket from the quest item. Instead, now it's an epic neck. Also, whilst I haven't seen it myself, it was a nice pleasant surprise to see that the infamous fluorescent green Mechanostrider has been found in Gnomeregan as well. So the player reports, according to Wowhead, is that it's dropping from the last boss, and this has actually got a bit of history to it, because someone apparently opened a ticket back in the day requesting that the GM restored their mount because they accidentally deleted it, and they was actually given this instead, which was unobtainable. So only one person has ever had this mount. So quite cool that it's actually in the game now. What the drop chance is going to look like on it, I don't know, but as I say, in the one clear we done, we did not see it. Before getting onto the STV PvP event, how about the general state of classes in PvP? Well, you may or may have not seen, but Druids have already had their Star Surge nerfed for PvP, but Blizzard have tried to then buff it in a way for PvE. So on this quite lengthy blue post, they did say that they intend to follow their once per week class adjustment schedule and take the time needed with class adjustments to not make too many changes too hastily. So this does mean pretty much every week you can expect to see some tuning. But they have said that there's one major outlier, and that is Star Surge for Druids. Now, I don't know if you've been on the receiving end of a crit Star Surge, but if you're a poor little mage like me with not much health, it can literally one-shot if it crits. So what they've done is the base damage of Star Surge has been reduced by 30%, and additionally they identified a bug where it wasn't gaining the correct spell power coefficient. So to compensate for the adjustment, they're adding an additional effect to Star Surge that causes your next Starfire to cause 66% additional damage. But it is at least forcing a Druid to have to hardcast in PvP, which obviously makes a massive difference because they can be interrupted. Up until this moment in time, a Druid can literally just run round and every 6 seconds press Star Surge whilst keeping themselves healed, and they pretty much delete people. The thing I will say though is, yes, they can literally do 2 Star Surges in a row, and if they both crit, almost guaranteed to kill anyone. They aren't really the exception. I've been completely deleted in 1 second by melee hunters. A full set of dots from a Shadow Priest is almost certain death. Rogues can lock you down and destroy you super fast, and like you've already seen in this video, if a mage has their 3-minute cooldowns, no one can survive. I feel like it's just going to be an incredibly bursty PvP phase where it will literally be impossible to balance and pretty pointless trying to balance it when it's only going to last 8 to 10 weeks. So if you don't enjoy being on the receiving end of being globaled, or don't find it a fun PvP experience to do the same to someone else, I honestly don't see it changing massively, because a lot of classes outside of just a boomy with Star Surge is going to need addressing. Of course, certain classes will get on Blizzard's radar, like Druids, but most classes with the right spec and runes have a way of causing really bursty damage. I play Horde, so I haven't had the pleasure of being on the receiving end of an Elemental Shaman, but from what I hear, with Elemental Mastery and a lucky Overload proc, they're literally deleting people as well. Personally though, as a mage, I'm finding it really fun. Yeah, I'm pretty useless against some classes when I have no cooldowns, but killing people in 1 second when I do definitely makes up for that. So the STV event, Well, I predicted exactly what was going to happen in a podcast the day before launch, because knowing the classic player base, we will do whatever it takes to get things done quick. That farming the graveyard and AoE spamming for crazy amounts of bloods leading to crazy amounts of coins started almost immediately. But then Blizzard did make a change where a debuff was added so you wouldn't reward people currency after death for a short while, which to then now, with the most recent changes, which looks like it's back to farming graveyards again. I am so torn on this event. I actually enjoy it when I'm doing it, but the design of it I think is absolutely terrible, and I think it's going to need a lot of addressing over the next few weeks to get it in a decent state. And I'll be completely honest, outside of the fact that it is just one big free-for-all and it can get a bit frustrating depending on your class, because I do think certain classes definitely get it easier. If they just found a way to eliminate the lag, it would instantly be 10 times better than it is already. Because I personally find the lag in this event the most irritating thing above all else. In a style of gameplay like PvP where it's meant to be skill-based, but you can't even guarantee you're going to get an interrupt off when you're wanting to get an interrupt off, just completely ruins the experience and it just turns it into one big Zerg fest. Everyone's just running in, spamming buttons, trying to get the killing blow so they get the bloods to then be able to get the coins. It's just not a particularly fun experience for anyone when you can't actually play your class properly due to lag, not due to skill. I was a bit worried that came out wrong. I also would say there's definitely been some contradictions around the event as well, because from the devs in the interview just before launch, they said the reason there's no world buff from the STV event, or part of the reason, is because of how brutal STV is, and they don't want people to feel forced to do it yet. They did also say the fact that they just didn't want loads of world buffs being added willy-nilly. But they did specifically say that forcing people to do this event might not be the right way to go. Yet if you want to get the most out of your character, I would say pretty much every single class needs to do STV to get 1 or 2 items. So while we aren't forced to do it long term, there kind of is still a requirement if you actually want to get the best gear for your class. What I am hoping though is that over time the event gets better. I don't mean by tuning or changing it, I just mean as more and more people get the items they want, and then people are just doing it for the fun of PvPing, the event could evolve over time, and how it is now could just be a distant memory. I could be being very optimistic there, but here's hoping. Now, the most recent changes to the STV PvP event, assuming they're in already by the time this video goes out, is the Blood Moon buff gained during the event will now increase players' stamina by 30%. So this does mean people will last a little bit longer, but 30% is a decent amount, don't get me wrong, but when there's so many people and you're getting hit by 4 or 5 people at the same time, you'll last a little bit longer. The Bloodless effect gained after death is now being adjusted, and it will now last 20 seconds down from a minute. Additionally, this effect will now also grant a pacify and invisibility effect so that players can resurrect and then move away from the graveyard, mount up, summon pets, and more effectively reset after combat to prepare for the next fight. Now, this is where the AoEing of graveyards comes in again, because all you're going to do is res, stand there, and now everybody knows if you're visible, you are worth blood. I don't think that's the answer. Zandalari emissaries are getting a more pronounced visual effect to make them more visible in their spawn locations in Booty Bay, Gromgol, Northern Stranglethorn, and Ujamba Isle. Now, they have said that it's tuned in a way where the rewards that they've added should be pretty easy to obtain, even if a little bit frustrating, and definitely that there's more changes to come. They've not addressed all the issues that they'd like yet. These are just these initial hot fixes for now. Next up is the crafted gear, and it's a really interesting quest line that they've added, actually. I'll put a full link to Wowhead's guide in the description below. But ultimately, you need to get yourself into Gnomeregan to start it, because it's in that really important room I was talking about. And then the quest is pretty much just going to send you all over the world, doing various different things to fix a core. And then there's quite a hefty recipe cost, which is something I wasn't expecting. Even the crafting components are quite expensive, being 15 gold, but the recipes are actually 25 gold. So don't expect to do your first Gnomeregan clear, go around the world, making sure you can get your recipes and then it's free. It's going to be quite a gold sink as well. But like I say, I'm not going to cover the full quest line here, because that definitely is not the purpose of the video. I'll just put a link in the description below. The only other minor thing I want to touch on before we close out the video is still to do with professions, but where you train them. So Wowhead put this post out, and I definitely think for anyone who plans on leveling their professions on alts and mains and are not too sure where all the trainers are, you should definitely take a little screen grab of this and keep it handy. Because I actually learnt the hard way by travelling to 2 different cities to try and learn alchemy before I looked at this and went, oh, I actually need to go to Undercity before I could train up alchemy. And it was actually getting a bit frustrating. So I just thought I'd throw this table in at the end so you can screen grab it or do whatever you want if you're not too familiar where all the artisan trainers are, because now in phase 2 you're obviously going to be able to get to 225, but there is only certain trainers in certain places that can actually teach you that, and books are still required for things like fishing, cooking and first aid. But overall, so far, I would say Phase 2 has been a really positive experience, and I am really enjoying it and actually cannot wait to do my next character. But I just want to get everything ticked off on the mage. As I say, so far, Profession's done, Gnomeregan done, STV event pretty much done. I could do with farming a little bit more because I would like to get the mount, but I'm not that bothered about the mount. I've got the items that I need. So yeah, it could be alt time soon, and yeah, you're probably thinking, wow, you need to get out and touch some grass. Anyway, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.